you think Americans could survive a British heat wave?
They've overestimated what they can hack.
No, definitely not. It's too humid.
You're fucking giggling,
Do you think a country that gets mocked for its food portions, its healthcare bills, and its traffic could actually be the place that makes hardened European travelers cry at an airport gate? Because that is exactly what has been happening this summer, and nobody saw it coming. If you want more videos like this, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. Because what you are about to hear changes the way a lot of people think about this country, and it starts with something as small as a stranger picking up a check. It usually begins the same way. A European lands in the United States expecting exactly what they have been told to expect. Loud people, bad food, and a culture that feels more like a theme park than a real place. Then something happens that does not fit the script. A traveler from Scotland, in the country for the World Cup buildup, found himself short on cash at a diner in a small Texas town, and before he could even finish explaining the situation to the waitress, the man in the next booth had already quietly paid the difference and walked out without waiting to be thanked. It is the kind of moment that gets clipped and shared 1,000 times online, not because it is rare in America, but because it is rare enough anywhere that it stops people cold.
America, this is no joke. It's 7:30 in the evening and I've never felt heat like it. Why is it like this? This Texas heat is ridiculous. It's cooler on the sun. It's so hot, I saw fire ants with sunscreen on. In fact, it's that hot, I'm pretty sure if you was to milk a cow right now, you'd get evaporated milk. In fact, no, it's hotter than that. It's the air, you can't breathe. It's thicker than Cardi B. It's that hot, I've just seen a bird pull a worm out the ground with oven mitts on. How do people survive this? Do chickens just lay hard-boiled eggs around here? Like, what? You know what? I'm half tempted to pass away, because I think cremation will be cooler than this. I've been to Arizona.
A second story making the rounds involves a German fan whose car broke down outside a stadium parking lot before a match. And within minutes, he had 3 separate strangers pull over to help, one of whom refused any payment and instead handed him a cold drink for the road. These are not isolated internet legends. They echo a pattern that shows up again and again in traveler accounts, forums, and reaction videos. A pattern of everyday Americans treating strangers with a warmth that feels almost old-fashioned to visitors raised in cooler, more reserved social environments. Then there is the police. For a European raised on a media diet of American crime dramas and news segments about tension between officers and the public, the actual experience on the ground during World Cup season has been jarring in the opposite direction. Body camera footage and fan-shot clips have circulated showing officers outside stadiums cracking jokes with international fans, posing for photos in oversized foam hats, and helping lost tourists find their hotels rather than treating them as a problem to be managed. One widely shared clip shows an officer in Atlanta trading good-natured trash talk with a group of French supporters about the tournament bracket, the kind of relaxed human interaction that a lot of Europeans simply did not believe was possible between American law enforcement and the public.
And look how many people are here floating this river. I don't have a ring right now, but I had a ring yesterday, and we just sat and drank beers floating down the river, and it was the best thing that I've done since being in Texas, because it was just so relaxing and so...
A Dutch tourist wandering off course near a downtown transit hub later described the experience of being personally walked 2 blocks by a patrol officer just to make sure he found the right platform. An encounter, he said, completely rewired his expectations for the rest of the trip. It is not just the big cinematic gestures either. It is the small ones that seem to land the hardest. A shopkeeper in a small town outside Nashville has become something of a minor internet fixture after multiple travelers described how he insists on giving free samples, free advice, and sometimes a free t-shirt to anyone visibly new to the area, treating every out-of-towner like a guest in his home rather than a customer to be processed. A Swedish family traveling with young children shared how a total stranger in a grocery store checkout line offered to hold their spot while they ran back for a forgotten item, then struck up a 20-minute conversation about their trip once they returned, ending with an invitation to a neighborhood cookout that same weekend. Would you rather live somewhere colder but more private, or somewhere warmer but a little more in your business? Because that is the actual trade-off a lot of these travelers say they were not prepared to think about. What is happening here is not that America has no problems, and no serious traveler is claiming that. It is that the baseline expectations set by headlines and stereotypes turns out to be badly out of step with the lived day-to-day experience of ordinary hospitality. And the gap between the expectation and the reality is exactly what makes these moments hit so hard on camera. Then there is the sheer scale of the place, which almost every European traveler brings up unprompted within the first day of arrival. It starts at the gas station. A visitor expecting a cramped fuel stop with a rack of stale snacks instead finds something closer to a small department store, with dozens of pumps, walls of fresh food, and a bathroom cleaner than some European train stations. The Bookies phenomenon in Texas has become something of a pilgrimage stop for international travelers, specifically because nothing in their home country prepared them for a gas station that functions more like a destination than a pit stop. From there, the culture shock only compounds. A supermarket in suburban Ohio can stretch the length of several European city blocks, its aisles stacked floor to ceiling with more varieties of a single product than some travelers have seen in their entire lives combined. One French visitor described standing in the cereal aisle for what felt like 10 straight minutes, genuinely unsure how a nation could need that many decisions just to eat breakfast. The portion sizes follow the same logic. A plate ordered as a single meal at an American diner regularly arrives large enough to feed 2 or 3 people back home. Something that initially reads as excess, but that many travelers eventually come to see as a kind of generosity, an unwillingness to let a guest leave hungry. The trucks tell the same story in a different language. A German engineer touring the country for the tournament described standing next to a fully loaded American pickup and feeling, in his own words to a group of reaction video hosts, like he was looking at a small piece of construction equipment rather than a personal vehicle.
I am living my dream. This is honestly, guys, I could cry. It's so beautiful. It's so, apparently there's just lightning. No, I didn't see lightning. What's that? I'm crying and there's lightning and it's all a bit overwhelming. It's just so beautiful. Just look at it.
The highways stretch the point further still. Roads that run in a straight, flat line for hours without a single turn are almost incomprehensible to a traveler used to a continent where you can cross an international border every 90 minutes. And then there are the stadiums themselves. Arenas built for the World Cup that dwarf almost anything in European domestic football, with capacity and infrastructure that left even seasoned tournament veterans doing a double take. Would you rather have compact and walkable, or big enough to genuinely lose your friends in the parking lot? Most travelers say they arrived certain of their answer and left a lot less sure. Nature does something similar to European assumptions about scale, except this time targets the assumption that Europe holds a monopoly on natural beauty and historical depth. A hiking trail through a national park out west can run longer than an entire cross-country European rail journey, and more than one visitor has admitted they simply did not have the physical stamina prepared for distances that Americans treat as a weekend outing. The sheer variety within a single country stuns people just as much as the size. A traveler can stand in a desert in the morning, drive to a temperate rainforest by afternoon, and end the day at the base of a glacier-fed lake, all without crossing a single national border. Something that simply does not exist as an option anywhere in Europe. Time zones add another layer of disorientation entirely. A phone call placed from the East Coast to a relative on the West Coast crosses 3 full hours of difference while never leaving the same country, a concept that a Belgian tourist attempting to plan a family video call described as genuinely difficult to wrap his head around until he lived it. The lakes alone have become a minor sensation among European visitors, who assumed wrongly that a landlocked body of water could never rival an ocean coastline. Standing on the shore of one of the Great Lakes with no opposite bank visible on the horizon has become a viral moment in its own right. Travelers filming themselves visibly stunned that what they are looking at is not in fact the sea. Wildlife encounters round out the picture. A herd of elk wandering casually through a mountain town. A black bear spotted from a safe distance along a scenic overlook. A bald eagle circling above a highway rest stop.
America, we need to have a word about the thing you can see on my face. The sun, the heat. Yesterday, it was 80 Fahrenheit. And I thought that was scorching. I was sweating, absolutely dripping my whole body.
These are the kinds of moments that get clipped, shared, and reacted to specifically because nothing in the average European's daily life includes casual proximity to animals of that scale. Safety is the stereotype that seems to take the hardest hit once boots actually hit the ground. Europeans arrive having absorbed a steady diet of news coverage focused overwhelmingly on crime and unrest, and they leave describing something closer to the opposite experience in the specific cities and towns tied to the tournament. Downtown areas transformed for fan zones report cleaner streets than visitors expected, with dedicated cleanup crews working through the night to keep public spaces presentable for the morning rush. Crowd management around stadiums has drawn its own praise, with visitors describing an order and efficiency to the movement of tens of thousands of fans that felt more organized than similar events they had attended back home. An English fan who openly admitted to reporters that he packed extra caution into his trip based on what he had read online later described feeling almost sheepish about it once he experienced how relaxed and welcoming the actual atmosphere turned out to be, particularly around law enforcement, who he found approachable rather than intimidating at every checkpoint he passed through. None of this erases the fact that safety concerns in America are real and vary enormously by location, And no honest video on this topic should pretend otherwise. But the specific, curated experience of international visitors moving through tournament host cities has, by nearly every account circulating online this summer, run dramatically counter to the danger narrative that dominates so much European media coverage of the country. Money is where the story gets more complicated and more human. The cost of a doctor's visit without insurance genuinely alarms most European visitors, coming as they do from systems where healthcare is treated as a guaranteed public good rather than a market transaction. That shock is real, and it shows up in nearly every serious comparison video on this topic. But alongside it sits a set of facts that surprise Europeans in the opposite direction. Wages in many American industries, particularly in skilled trades and service roles with tipping built in, can run meaningfully higher than equivalent roles across much of Europe, even after accounting for the added cost of things like private insurance. A Dutch bartender working a temporary visa position during the tournament described being stunned by how much more he took home in a single week compared to an equivalent shift back home, even after factoring in the higher cost of living. Home ownership tells a similarly layered story. Suburban and small-town housing in large parts of the country remains dramatically more attainable in terms of raw square footage per dollar than almost anywhere in Western Europe, even as coastal cities like New York and San Francisco push prices into territory that would shock anyone. Taxes round out the picture in a way that frequently surprises visitors who assumed America was some kind of low-tax paradise. Combined federal, state, and local tax burdens in high-cost states can end up comparable to what a European pays, the difference being what that tax money is spent on and how directly a citizen sees the return. What tends to land hardest with visitors, though, is not any single statistic, but the texture of ambition they encounter in ordinary conversations. A shift manager at a diner outside Dallas, working double shifts to save toward opening a small business of her own within the next 2 years, described her plan with a level of confident, almost unguarded optimism that a French visitor listening in later admitted he simply does not hear from people in equivalent jobs back home, where the same conversation tends to carry a heavier note of resignation about what is realistically possible. Would you rather have a stronger safety net with a lower ceiling or a thinner safety net with a higher one? It is the exact question this trip forces almost every European traveler to sit with, whether they meant to or not. Then there is the flag. It is everywhere, on porches, in classroom windows, stitched into the sleeve of a stranger's jacket at a gas station, and for a lot of European visitors, that level of everyday, unironic display of national symbolism takes real adjustment. In most of Europe, that kind of overt patriotism carries a heavier historical weight, and visible flag culture at that scale can read as unusual at best. What shifts the perception for a lot of travelers is watching the anthem played before a match and seeing the reaction in the stands, not staged, not performative, just a stadium full of ordinary people, hand over heart, visibly moved. A Swedish supporter who initially found the whole ritual a little much described, changing his mind entirely after standing next to an elderly veteran in the crowd who was quietly crying through the entire anthem. A moment that reframed the display from empty spectacle into something that felt, in that instant, completely sincere. Small-town pride carries its own version of the same energy. A diner wall covered in decades of local football trophies, a hand-painted welcome sign at the edge of a town of 1,100 people, a volunteer fire department that doubles as the unofficial social club for half the county. These are the details that add up to a picture of identity built less around grand national mythology and more around fierce, specific, local belonging. Individual liberty threads through nearly every one of these stories in ways that visitors do not always name directly but clearly feel. In the shopkeeper who opens and closes on his own schedule with nobody to answer to, in the food truck owner who built a business from nothing with minimal permitting friction. In the sheer number of ordinary people a traveler meets over 2 weeks who are, in some small but real way, working for themselves rather than for someone else. Food culture deserves its own moment here, because it is where a lot of these threads, hospitality, scale, and identity, all collide at once. The tipping system alone takes real explaining, and more than one European visitor has described the genuine anxiety of trying to calculate an unfamiliar percentage under pressure at the end of a meal, only to be waved off by a server who insists it does not need to be perfect. Regional food identity runs deeper than most visitors expect, too. A trip that moves from Texas barbecue to Louisiana gumbo to a New England lobster roll can feel less like eating in one country and more like eating across 3 entirely different culinary traditions that just happen to share a passport. Drive-through culture gets its own reaction entirely, with visitors marveling at the sheer speed and specificity of an order taken, prepared, and handed through a car window in under 2 minutes, a level of convenience-driven efficiency that simply does not exist at the same scale back home. And through all of it runs that same undercurrent of generosity, a to-go box handed over unprompted, a free refill nobody asked for, a tonal get home safe tossed out by a server who will never see that table again. By the end of 2 or 3 weeks, something has usually shifted. Travelers who arrived with a checklist of confirmed skepticisms, the guns, the healthcare, the portion sizes, the flags, leave with a far more complicated and more often than not warmer picture than the one they packed. Comment sections under these reaction videos have filled up this summer with Europeans openly admitting they came in ready to confirm what they already believed and left having to walk a lot of it back. It is not that the criticisms disappear, because several of them hold up under real scrutiny. It is that they stop being the whole story, crowded out by 1,000 small, specific, human moments that no headline ever quite captures. So here is the actual question worth sitting with. Would you rather live in a place that is smaller, quieter, and more predictable, or one that is bigger, louder, and more generous than you expected? There is no wrong answer, but if this summer's tournament has proven anything, it is that a lot of people who thought they already knew the answer are leaving the country a little less sure than when they landed. If this is the kind of thing you find interesting, do us a favor and hit like, share it with someone who has strong opinions about this exact topic, subscribe if you have not already, and turn on notifications so you catch the next one in this series the moment it goes up. Before we go, one honest note. This video is a compilation drawing on public reaction content, traveler accounts, and social media moments shared around the World Cup 2026 season, put together for entertainment and discussion. It does not capture the full social reality of any country. It is not an official statement of policy or fact from any government or institution, and individual experiences like the ones described here will never be universal. Nothing in this video should be treated as a substitute for your own research or your own judgment, and the channel is not responsible for any decisions made based on it. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.